This is part 2 of should you upgrade your SoundDevices MixPre recorder? And the answer is probably not. Go back and watch the other video. We have a link down below in the description that'll get you there if you haven't seen that. But first of all, there is no new MixPre generation. I'm still talking here about the SoundDevices MixPre 2, which was announced and started shipping, I believe, in 2019. There's not a new generation yet as of 2026, June. When I was at the NAB show, the National Association of Broadcasters show, actually a year ago in 2025, I went to the SoundDevices booth and I talked with Paul Isaacs. We had a great conversation, as always. One question he asked me was, Curtis, if, and that's a big if, SoundDevices were to make a new generation of MixPre, what features would you like to see in it? So here are the features that I'd love to see in a new generation of a SoundDevices MixPre. Number 1, taller form factor to support several of the features I'm going to talk about below. So they've made it really skinny, and that's great, but I feel like it constrains what the device or where they could put various things on the device or the size of things they could put on the device. I'd like to see it a little bit taller, and here's why. Number 1, I'd love to see a bigger screen. It would make it easier to see. Now, they've done a pretty good job with a screen as tiny as it is. It seems to work pretty well, and even with my eyes, which are not perfect anymore, I need reading glasses nowadays when I do look at something that's relatively small and close. It would be nice to have a bigger screen. I would also say, some people have talked about this, it hasn't been a major issue for me, but if your fingers get wet or maybe sweaty because you're working outdoors in a really hot location, touchscreens don't work well for that. And this touchscreen is, the device is largely touchscreen driven when you have to dive into the menus. So touchscreen is good, the way they've implemented it well, but I feel like there are circumstances where it doesn't work so well. And that brings me to my next feature request, which is to get the menu volume encoder knob off of the side of the device and put it on the front of the device. So that's why we need it taller, bigger screen, and the encoder for menus and volume of your headphones on the front of the device, or make them 2 separate encoders. I could go either way on that. But that could help you with controlling the menus as well if you had that menu encoder on the front. If you have the SoundDevices MixPre in a bag, it's just really hard to reach that knob on the side of the device when it's in the bag. Next up, I'd like to see a Hirose input even on the MixPre 3 and 6 so that I can power it with battery distribution systems or other external batteries. The MixPre is power hungry. If you compare this to competing products from Zoom, for example, the Zoom F8N Pro, the Zoom F8N Pro is way more power efficient, and that's fine. I'm okay with that if I had really good options to power the MixPre. AA batteries and powering a MixPre is just a no-go. I always use the battery sled for Sony L series batteries, the NPF batteries. Or sometimes if it's in a bag, I may also power it with a USB battery bank. Love to see something more robust than that, something like a Hirose input. I would also like a backup SD card slot, and I would like for the SD card slots to not be behind the battery so that I have to take the battery off to get the SD cards out. I understand on this kind of crowded form factor. I'm less concerned about making the MixPre teeny tiny and more about it being a little bit more ergonomic. So I would trade off the size a little bit for something that's a little bit more ergonomic. It would be nice also if there were support for more control surfaces. I know, or maybe SoundDevices made their own, although the thing is, if SoundDevices makes their own, it'll be nice. It'll be really nice, but it'll probably be pretty expensive as well. So if there's some way to support more control surfaces, that'd be kind of nice too. Now, there's some other things that other people have requested that I am skeptical that SoundDevices would ever implement. And let me just kind of mention a couple of those. Number 1, AES digital inputs and outputs. Actually, that reminds me I missed one. Going back to my list, I would love balanced outputs even on the 3 and 6. I know, again, you have to have a larger form factor to make that work, but it would be great. And they can be on the mini XLRs. It doesn't have to be full-size XLRs, but having a couple of balanced outputs would be really nice. Okay, on to some of those things that I think are unlikely. AES digital inputs and outputs. I think at that point, you're really starting to cannibalize SoundDevices' next product lineup, the SoundDevices 800 series. So that's the 833, the 888, and the Scorpio. I don't see it. It's maybe it's possible, but then you're going to raise the price of the MixPre, and that gets tricky. So we're trying to keep something in a prosumer price point and then adding all these additional pro features in. I think it's a long shot. Second, Dante. I've heard requests that they want the ability to do Dante network audio on a SoundDevices MixPre. If you don't understand what this is, the idea is that you'd plug a network cable into that, and then you could have other audio capture devices on that same Ethernet network that were bringing audio in from those other audio network devices. Also, definitely a solidly, from my perspective, pro feature, and doesn't really belong in a prosumer device. We'll see. I'm highly skeptical. And I think another thing that I've seen as a request is more sophisticated routing like you have on the 833, 888, and the Scorpio. I don't really see that happening either. It's more niche than what this device is really intended for. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts. If there is a new version of the MixPre, Paul Isaacs, if you're watching this, I hope you are. Love to see some of those new features in the next generation at the point when it makes sense to move on to the next generation. So the big question is, are the current versions still worth purchasing in 2026? For me, if it solves your problem, absolutely. It's a fantastic device. I've been using MixPre since when did the first ones come out? 2016 or 2017, in that time range. They have been fantastic performers for me. At work, at Webflow, we use one in our studio. For some of our setups, we use an 833 for the rest of our setups. They've been great performers in both cases. The only complaints I've had from the producers that I work with is on the MixPre, those things that I talked about before. They don't like that the SD card is behind the battery sled. They would like to have a backup SD card slot. They'd like other ways to power it. They would really like to have that menu encoder on the front instead of on the side, so on and so forth. So in any case, hope that was helpful. Love to hear what your feature requests are down below. Get out there and make some great sound, and we'll talk to you soon.